Discover the incredible journey of a hidden billionaire who found heartwarming love while disguised as a volunteer. Jake Harrison stood outside his family-run mechanic shop, the faded sign Harrison Auto Repair swaying gently with the summer breeze. To the people of Greenville, this was a sanctuary of hope and solutions, but to Jake, it felt more like a prison. At 35, he was already weary from the weight of bills and worries. His heart swelled with compassion for his neighbors, especially the elderly veterans who relied on him for trusty repairs, but his pockets were painfully devoid of anything but lint. Every day he toiled with dignity, pouring grease and sweat into cars that often wheezed back to life. Yet the American dream felt as distant as stars on a cloudy night. One fateful afternoon, the sky turned dark and ominous, heralding a storm that would shake Greenville to its core. Rain hammered like an army, transforming familiar streets into rivers of chaos. Jake watched from his shop window, heart racing as neighbors scrambled to help each other. The spirit of his community, while battered, was relentless. As floodwaters rose, love and friendship fought back valiantly against despair. But as cars floated away, it became evident nothing would be the same again. And the aftermath, while debris littered the road, Jake emerged as a beacon of strength. He fixed broken engines and bandaged the wounds of his neighbors, struggling to repair not just cars but spirits. That's when he saw her, Emily. With a beaming smile and eyes like soft amber, she moved through the wreckage, embracing those lost in grief. To Jake, she was an angel. What he didn't know was that Emily was a hidden billionaire, determined to understand the lives of those facing struggles just like his. "Can I help?" she asked, kneeling beside an elderly man whose car had sputtered to a halt. Together they worked seamlessly, laughter wrapping around them like a warmth that pushed away the chill of the disaster. Their bond deepened with every shared moment, fortified by their passion for lending a helping hand. But just as flames of hope began to ignite in Jake's soul, insecurity stirred deep in his gut. What if she didn't see him as worthy? What if the truth of her wealth wouldn't let them build anything lasting? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As days became weeks, Jake and Emily's connection blossomed, but the shadows of society threatened to tear them apart. Could he truly love someone who had everything while he felt like he had nothing? Whispered words of the townsfolk painted a certainty that barraged him with confusion. The community rallied around him, love pouring in like the rain that had once threatened to drown them. Yet when Emily's true identity loomed over them like a dark cloud, Jake was left torn. Just when the tide seemed to turn in their favor, a phone call shattered his world. A financial threat loomed large, one that could end his family legacy. Jake glanced down at his hands stained with oil and grit, heart pounding. And then a flash of movement caught his eye. There stood Emily, her gaze overflowing with concern. A storm raged inside him. Would he accept her help or risk losing everything? Jake took a deep breath, the weight of the phone call still heavy on his shoulders. Emily stood before him, worry etched across her face. He could see her desire to help, and it made his heart race with both hope and fear. The thought of accepting her money felt like a betrayal of everything he stood for. He was supposed to be the strong one, the one who could take care of himself and everyone around him. Yet here he was, drowning in a sea of uncertainty. "Jake," she whispered, taking a step closer, "what's wrong? You look lost." Lost was an understatement. He felt like a man adrift on a sinking ship, fighting against the tide. "It's just business is tough right now. The repairs from the storm, it put a dent in the budget," he confessed. But didn't he mention the looming threat? How could he tell her that his family legacy was at risk? That the shop his father built was hanging by a thread? Emily reached out, brushing her fingers against his arm. It felt electric, the warmth of her touch igniting something deep within him. "I'm here for you. Whatever you need," she insisted, her expression earnest and sincere. Jake swallowed hard. "You don't understand. I can't take your help. I can't be a charity case." Her brows knitted in confusion. "Help is not charity, Jake. It's support. We can face this together." For a moment he wanted to believe her. So much. But then the echoes of the townsfolk's whispers crept back in. How could they truly be together when his pride was so insistently barricading his heart? The next few days passed like a blur as he wrestled with his doubts. Emily visited him at the shop almost daily, bringing coffee, tools, and laughter. Each shared moment chipped away at his insecurities, yet another call from the bank loomed over him like a shadow. One evening, while the sun dipped low in the sky and cast a golden hue over Greenville, Jake locked up the shop and found Emily sitting on the front steps, sketching in a notebook. She looked up, her face lighting up the moment their eyes met. The worry seemed to vanish. "Hey," she greeted softly, "I thought I'd help you unwind a bit." A part of him couldn't resist the way she took initiative, so he sat down beside her. As they exchanged stories about childhood dreams, her laughter was like music, a pleasing sound that drowned out the storm brewing inside him. But as twilight fell, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. "Emily," he began, his voice faltering as uncertainty washed over him like a cold wave. "I need to tell you something important." She laid her notebook aside, giving him her full attention, and suddenly, the urgency of his confession surged. Then, the sudden blaring of sirens shattered the moment. They both turned towards the street, where lights flashed and shadows danced ominously against the buildings. A crowd was gathering and panic rippled through the air. "What is happening?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with concern. Jake jumped to his feet, heart racing. "We have to see." As they rushed toward the commotion, Jake felt a surge of dread. Whatever was happening could change everything again. The unknown loomed before them, ready to test their fragile bond in ways he could never imagine. Was this the moment they would fall apart, or the time they would fight together? With his heart pounding, he took Emily's hand, and they plunged into the chaos ahead. The noise grew louder as they approached the scene, the desperate cries of people merging with the wailing sirens. Jake and Emily pushed through the gathering crowd, worry tightening in Jake's chest. Shadows of the unknown loomed, each pulse of uncertainty feeding the tension coiling around him. "Let me through," he called, weaving toward the front. Emily clutched his hand, her grip firm but trembling. He felt her fear echoing in his own heart. Whatever waited ahead was a revelation waiting to unfurl, but he couldn't predict if it would bring solace or confusion. As they reached the area in front of the burning building, the scene unfolded like a nightmare. Flames danced angrily, licking at the night sky, casting eerie shadows around frantic firefighters working tirelessly. A stunned silence fell over the crowd as they absorbed the devastation. A familiar sign hung lifelessly, the once proud name of the local bakery splattered through ashes. "Oh no," Emily breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not Mrs. Holloway's bakery." Jake's stomach dropped. Mrs. Holloway had a special place in the hearts of Greenville. Her bakery wasn't just a shop, it was where memories were made, where Sunday mornings were spent in the warm embrace of sweet rolls and laughter. Seeing it in flames felt like losing a part of their town, a piece of their childhood. "We have to help," Emily exclaimed, her voice breaking through the suffocating dread. She didn't wait for his nod. Instead, she set her sights on a group of volunteers rushing in with buckets of water and supplies. Jake stared at her, rooted in place. Help? How? With everything crumbling in his own life, how could he possibly contribute anything to this? Yet the look in Emily's eyes, filled with that fierce determination, ignited something in him. She was relentless in her desire to uplift others, even when the weight of the world threatened to pull her down. He took a shaky breath and followed her as they joined the volunteers. Adrenaline fueled him. They passed buckets and shouted encouragement, moving as one frantic unit. The cold night air filled with the smell of soot and desperation, but amidst the chaos, Jake found a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in weeks. "Come on, Jake," Emily called, keeping up her spirits even in the heart of the crisis. Her laughter mingled with the urgency of the moment. "We can do this." For every ember that fell, more hope sprang up in his chest. Remembering what Mrs. Holloway had always said about community and togetherness, Jake suddenly realized that they fought not just for the bakery but for each other, for the fabric that wove this town together. Just as he passed another bucket, he felt a sudden tug on his shoulder. He turned to see a little girl, no more than 7, her eyes wide and frightened. "Is the bakery going to be okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jake's heart ached at her innocent vulnerability. He knelt down to her level. "I promise we're doing everything we can. We're not giving up." But as the flames roared, a knot of fear twisted tight in his chest, and he couldn't shake the question. Would they be able to save it? The flames were relentless, and his own challenges felt like burdens he couldn't carry anymore. Then the fire chief's voice rang out urgent, commanding. "We need more help. Evacuate the next block." Panic swelled in the crowd and his eyes met Emily's. They exchanged a look that said everything: fear for what they might lose, hope for what they could save, but also a deep understanding of the stakes involved. Jake squeezed her hand. Whatever was at risk within them both, this moment of truth was leading toward something or away from it. "What do we do?" he asked. She grinned fiercely, the fire's glow illuminating her determination. "We push through. Together." In that moment Jake finally realized something profound. Maybe accepting help and giving it wasn't a sign of weakness, but a testament to the strength they could discover in unity. But as they moved forward towards the fire, another siren wailed in the distance, this one different, more ominous. Jake's heart raced. He could feel that something more was coming, something that would test the very foundation of everything he believed about love, support, and battling the storms in life. In the throes of chaos he led Emily forward, not knowing what awaited them on the other side. The flames crackled furiously, sending out sparks that danced toward the night sky. Jake could feel the heat against his face, a fierce reminder of what they were up against. But his heart was pounding, not just from fear but from a sudden rush of purpose. He couldn't back down now. Emily's grip kept him anchored, and he could see determination blazing in her eyes, urging him to be braver than he ever thought possible. "Let us go," she shouted, pulling him along as they flanked a group of other volunteers, each with the same desperate sense of urgency. They worked together like a machine, a chaotic one, but effective as buckets passed from hand to hand. Water splashed against the hungry flames, hissing on contact, but the fire roared back with its own ferocity. Still they didn't stop. They couldn't. Each splash felt like a small victory. Each shout of encouragement felt like a lifeline. But there was more than just the flames threatening that familiar bakery. Jake often felt like he too was slowly burning down from within. Was he ever going to figure his life out? He pushed those thoughts aside as he focused on the moment, forcing himself to be present, to be part of this fight. "Look," Emily pointed toward Mrs. Holloway's other volunteers, a few of whom were inconsiderately trying to save some of the bakery's signature desserts that had somehow survived. It felt like a ridiculous endeavor, but Jake couldn't help but admire their persistence. It reminded him of Mrs. Holloway, the laughter and kindness that had poured from her like the dough she'd kneaded with love. There was something profound about saving those carbs, perhaps because it symbolized not just sustenance but connection. "Let us help them," Emily said, her eyes bright with resolve. She was right. They needed to rescue those pastries, to honor Mrs. Holloway's legacy. Jake followed Emily, their bodies weaving through the crowd. They reached the makeshift assembly line of hopeful volunteers. Jake's hands went into action, carrying trays of iced cinnamon rolls, their sugary glaze shimmering even in the tension-filled air. He passed them to Emily, who carefully examined each one before sending it further down the line to safety. From the corner of his eye, he caught the little girl staring wide-eyed, still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, the bakery could be saved. Jake felt compelled to reassure her. "We're doing great," he called. "Look at all these rolls we're saving." He waved a tray in the air. The girl's face lit up and she let out a small cheer, a tiny but potent reminder of why they were fighting against the flames. This wasn't just a building. It was the heart of Greenville, a place filled with laughter, friendship, and love. Keeping it alive meant keeping their community alive. But then chaos erupted. A loud crack split the air and a hiss followed. A section of the roof had collapsed inward, sending debris crashing down and smoke billowing outward like a monster awakening from its slumber. People screamed, and the fire chief shouted orders to evacuate. Jake felt a surge of panic as he instinctively turned to Emily, their eyes locking in a gasp of shared dread. "We need to get everyone back," she yelled, but the crowd was moving in chaos, confusion overtaking them. Time slowed as Jake grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her away from the collapsing structure. They ran closer to safety, urgency fueling their steps. Are we leaving? Emily asked, breathless. We can't just leave. Jake shouted back. What if? But he didn't finish. There were too many what-ifs to bear. The weight pressed hard in his chest, and he felt fear mix with determination. But then another siren pierced through the noise, eerie and loud. Something else was approaching, and Jake's heart raced with dread. It didn't feel like it was over, not by a long shot. Something's coming, he murmured as they stood, watching the chaos unfold around them. What do you think it is? Emily asked, the concern etched across her face. I don't know, Jake replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. But the tension in the air suggested something big was about to happen. Was it help or something more sinister? As they pushed away from the flames, adrenaline coursed through him. Something was coming, and it had the potential to change everything once again. Jake, whatever happens next, Emily started, her voice firm and steady. I know, he interrupted, narrowing his eyes on the horizon, bracing for what lay ahead. We face it together. The moment hung between them like the flames flickering in the distance, igniting both fear and hope. And as they turned to confront the approaching darkness, their hearts pounded as one, ready for whatever struggle, triumph, or revelation awaited them. The blaring siren grew louder, a monstrous wail that drowned out the crackling flames and screams around them. Jake felt a knot in his stomach. As he turned to face the chaotic scene, something shifted in the air, a heavy anticipation that pressed down on him. What was approaching? His eyes darted toward the street, trying to catch a glimpse of what could be the salvation or doom of their community. Then the headlights of a fire truck appeared, slicing through the smoke like a beacon of hope. Relief washed over him, but the fear still clung tightly to his chest. They had fought so hard to save the bakery. What if it was all in vain? Is that the fire department? Emily shouted above the noise, her face lighting up with a mix of hope and fear. Yeah, Jake called back, trying to keep his voice steady, though his heart thrummed wildly. They'll know what to do. As the truck pulled closer, the crew jumped out, firemen clad in heavy gear, faces tight with determination. They moved quickly, unrolling hoses and setting up equipment. Their presence was an anchor in the storm of panic. Jake felt a spark of renewed energy surge through him, reigniting the fire of purpose swirling within. But there was no time to waste. We need to get those kids out of here, he urged Emily, pointing to a small group huddled away from the chaos, eyes wide with fear. They shouldn't be in this smoke. Let me help, Emily insisted, her bravery evident as she broke away from his side and bounded toward the scared children. Emily, Jake called out, fear gripping him. He fought internally between staying safe and not leaving her behind. I'll be fine, she reassured him over her shoulder, her voice unwavering, even as her eyes darted nervously as Jake watched her go. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. There was no way he could let her face the dangers alone. Without thinking twice, he sprinted after her, battling through the clamor of voices and chaos. Hey! He shouted to the children, squatting to meet their frightened gazes. We're going to get you to safety, okay? Can you follow me? The kids nodded, though their faces were still etched with uncertainty. Jake's heart raced faster. He took a breath, steadying himself. On my count, we're going to move. 1, 2, 3. He led them away from the approaching danger, the heat still licking at their backs. Emily turned, scanning the area as they made their retreat, worry lining her features. He reached out, catching her just as they got the kids to safety behind a line of spectators and firefighters. Relief washed over him as he turned to Emily, breathless. But that relief quickly faded when he saw the expression on her face. What is it? He asked, sensing her tension. Her eyes shifted back to the bakery. The flames danced higher, and with them, a new surge of dread pulsed through Jake. We need to go back, she insisted, voice firm. There are still people inside. Jake felt his heart clench. No, it's too dangerous. The roof might collapse again. But what if someone needs help? Emily's face was torn between desperation and undaunted courage. Before he could respond, an explosion of sparks erupted from the main structure, a loud crack echoing through the night air that sent the crowd gasping back. Jake caught the dread pooling in his stomach again, fear mixing with the adrenaline driving him forward. Emily, he began, but the look in her eyes silenced him. He understood then that running toward danger wasn't just an option to her. It was a calling. In that moment Jake realized they might be standing on the edge of something profound, a test of will that could reshape not just the night, but their lives entirely. "Okay," he whispered, gripping her hand tightly. "Together then." As they turned back toward the flames, Jake felt something deep in his gut. This would change everything. Would it be their moment of heroism or catastrophe? The fire swirled behind them like a living thing, waiting to release secrets and revelations. And just as they took their first step toward the inferno, lightning illuminated the sky, casting shadows of uncertainty, but also lighting a spark of courage within their hearts. What awaited them in the heart of the blaze was an answer neither had anticipated. As the flames roared, Jake barely managed to ask, "Are we ready for this?" With a determined squeeze of his hand, Emily nodded. "We have to be." The next phase of their test loomed ahead, and there was no turning back now. The heat hit like a wall as Jake and Emily stepped closer to the blaze, the fiery tongues licking at the air around them. Every breath was thick with smoke, stinging their lungs and clawing at their throats. The world beyond the flames faded away, reduced to shadows and muffled sounds. They were drawn into a singular focus, the flickering light showing them the way. "Stay close," Jake urged, tension coiling tight in his chest like a wound spring. He searched for any signs of movement, any cries for help beyond the crackling fire. The heat pushed against him, demanding retreat, but there was no turning back now. Emily's face was set, unwavering. "We can't leave anyone behind," she said, determination radiating from her. She took a step forward and Jake followed, their feet crunching over debris as they maneuvered through the chaos. As they neared the entrance, a towering figure emerged from the smoke. It was Jake's neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a retired firefighter who lived right down the street. His eyes were wide, filled with a mix of disbelief and fear. "Jake, Emily, what are you doing here? Get back. We're looking for anyone still inside." Jake shouted back, his heart racing. It felt surreal, the line between right and wrong blurring as duty took over. Mr. Thompson's face hardened. "No time. The roof is about to go. You need to leave." But Jake couldn't just stand by. There might be people trapped. A sudden crash echoed, sending debris tumbling down from above. He felt the adrenaline surge even higher, pushing him forward. He glanced at Emily. Her eyes were ablaze with courage, echoing the determination that pulsed through him. They didn't budge. In the distance, a muffled cry broke through the roar of flames, a shriek for help buried beneath the noise. Jake's heart skipped a beat. "Did you hear that?" Emily nodded, her expression fierce. "Let us go." They rushed toward the sound, weaving through the thick smoke that threatened to envelop them, their minds racing. "Hello," Jake called out, his voice straining against the cacophony. "Is anyone there?" Another cry echoed back, more desperate this time. Spurred them on. They stumbled into the bakery's interior, where the heat intensified, wrapping around them like a blanket. The smell of burning wood was nauseating, but they had to push through. "Over here," Emily shouted, pointing into the thick haze. They rushed toward it, hearts pounding louder than the flames behind them. As they turned a corner, they spotted a figure curled on the floor, barely visible through the smoke. It was a woman trapped beneath a fallen beam, her face pale and shocked. Panic shot through Jake. "Help her!" He yelled at Emily, rushing to lift the beam. Gritting her teeth, Emily strained against the weight, but it didn't budge. "It's too heavy. Try again. We can do this." With one last effort, they pushed together, adrenaline lending them strength. The beam shifted, and they managed to lift it just enough for the woman to wriggle free. "Come on," Jake pleaded as he pulled the woman into his arms, urging her to stand. But as he turned to lead the way out, the structure groaned ominously, sending a shower of sparks overhead. "What about the exit?" Emily shouted, panic settling in her voice. "Keep moving. We can make it." But as they took a step, the ground below shook, and another section of the roof collapsed, blocking their escape route. Their hearts raced in the darkness. "Oh no," Jake gasped, looking at Emily. "What do we do?" Trapped in a fiery maze, the heat grew unbearable. Hope was slipping away, but bravery held it back, thrumming through their veins. "There." Emily pointed to a window half-choked with flames. "It's our way out." Jake spotted the window, but it was too high. "We need to boost each other up." With their combined strength, they knew they had to trust one another. And as Jake stepped back, readying himself to aid Emily's rise to safety, the desperation and determination in her eyes fueled his resolve. Would they defy the odds? Would they escape this inferno together? The world outside was uncertain, but here, amidst the chaos, they found a glimmer of hope. Ready? Emily said, determination hardening her features again. Always, Jake assured her, his voice steady despite the turmoil. They were ready to leap into the unknown together. But would they reach the escape they sought? The flames roared behind them, a reminder that time was running out. Jake felt the air grow heavier, each inhalation burning deeper. Emily focused on the window, determination etched on her brow. She climbed onto Jake's shoulders, her hands stretching toward the opening. Just a little higher. Jake grunted, feeling her weight shift. She reached for the ledge, fingers grazing the scorched wood. Suddenly, the wall shook violently, and a plume of smoke billowed toward them, choking their already strained breaths. Emily! Jake shouted, panic igniting his voice. With a fierce push, Emily lunged, finally grasping the edge. I'm up! She gasped. Jake felt her fingers slip. Hold on! He threw his arms up, trying to catch her as she swung her legs. I can't hold for long. She glanced down, eyes wide, but there was no turning back now. Just give me a boost. With an urgent grunt, Jake pushed himself off the ground with every ounce of strength, sending her higher. She clawed at the ledge again, and this time her grip took hold. Now! She shouted, and with a last heave, Jake hoisted himself just far enough under her legs to help push her through the opening. Emily disappeared into the haze outside. Jake felt the floor tremble beneath him. Heart pounding, he glanced at the woman beside him. She was too weak to stand alone, but the roar of the fire seemed to scream for action. Can you walk? He asked urgently. I don't know, she stammered, trembling visibly. Just try. Jake grasped her hand and helped her to her feet. They took a hesitant step forward, but the structure groaned again, and the air swelled with the heat of flames. Move! Emily's voice echoed from the window, breaking through the chaos. I can pull you both up. He didn't know if they had time. Can you make it? He asked the woman, his voice a whisper. Let us go, she encouraged, desperation reflecting in her eyes. Jake fastened an arm around her waist, and together they staggered toward the window. They had to fight through the smoke, through the suffocating heat that lashed at them. Suddenly, another explosion rattled the bakery. They stumbled, falling to their knees. Forward! Keep going! Jake cried out, dragging the woman along. How much longer? The woman gasped, her strength faltering. Just a few more steps. Jake felt his heart racing, the fear of failure roiling in his stomach. They brushed against the walls, their escape approaching but still so far. Emily called again, hurry! You can do it! The world warped in his vision, smoke curling and darkening his surroundings. Desperation sparked within him. Hold on! He tightened his grip around the woman, pushing through the burning pain in his chest. Finally, the window loomed ahead. Jake hoisted the woman onto his back. I'm going to lift you. In the last desperate push, he launched her through the window just as the bakery let out a final mighty groan. Emily! He shouted, panic seizing him as he turned back, searching through the smoke. Help! But Emily was there, reaching in, arms outstretched. With a surge of hope, Jake lunged forward, grabbing onto Emily's hands. She pulled with everything she had, and he felt a powerful tug as he slipped past the jagged edge. They fell onto the ground, rolling away from the fiery grip of the bakery as it collapsed behind them in a ruinous crash. Jake gasped for air, the cool night air soothing against his scorched lungs. Beside him, the woman coughed violently while Emily cradled her, weaving a blanket of comfort around her as they all laid sprawled out. We did it, Jake said, shock washing over him. But even in survival, a new reality set in. They had saved a life, but at what cost? Around them, sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. What now? Jake whispered to Emily, his heart still racing, thoughts spiraling. But beyond the flames, beyond the rush of side effects of their rescue, he didn't know what awaited them in the aftermath. Would this mark the beginning of something they never saw coming? Or would it only reveal the scars of this experience? The whir of approaching sirens mingled with the smoke in the air, lifting a question Jake never thought he'd need. to confront what they would face next as survivors. Jake's heart raced as he lay on the cold ground, the reality of their escape slowly sinking in. The sirens grew louder, piercing through the thick smoke still hanging over the bakery's ruins. He looked over at Emily and the woman she was trying to comfort. "Is she okay?" he asked, his voice shaky. Emily brushed the hair away from the woman's face, her expression a mixture of determination and concern. "She's just a little dazed. We need to get her out of here." The woman nodded weakly, her eyes fluttering open. "I thought I was done for," she murmured, her voice fragile like glass. "You're safe now. Just hold on," Jake said, feeling the weariness creeping into his bones as the sirens approached. A crowd began to gather at the scene, their faces illuminated by the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. Jake blinked against the brightness, the enormity of the moment sinking in. They had escaped, but the chaos wasn't over yet. "We should move her away from here," Emily said, glancing back at the flaring remnants of the bakery. "It's not safe." "Right," Jake said, nodding. With effort he helped the woman stand, Emily taking one side while he took the other. They moved slowly, supporting her weight as they made their way to the sidewalk, the coolness of the pavement a stark contrast to the heat they had just escaped. When they finally settled her against a nearby wall, Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. But it quickly faded. "What's going to happen now?" he asked, looking from Emily to the woman. "We'll just wait for the paramedics," Emily said, her voice steady, but Jake could see the tremor behind her calm facade. He squeezed her hand, letting her know he was right there with her. The crowd began to murmur, voices buzzing with questions and concerns. Jake listened, catching bits and pieces of conversations. Was anyone inside? Did they get everyone out? What a tragedy. The woman they had rescued, her breathing still uneven, looked up at Jake and Emily, gratitude mixed with fear in her eyes. You saved me," she whispered, clutching Emily's hand tightly. "I don't even know your names." "I'm Jake, this is Emily," he introduced softly, feeling an odd mix of pride and humility. They didn't feel like heroes. They were just survivors. "Thank you," the woman said again. "I thought I'd never see the outside world again." Jake swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. He could hardly process what they had just gone through. Would he ever truly be able to shake off the fear of the flames, the instinctual panic that had seized him? As the sound of footsteps grew louder, paramedics rushed into view, rushing towards them with urgency. "What happened here?" one of the responders barked. Checking over the woman immediately, Jake pointed towards the ruin of the bakery, his voice rising in intensity. "There were people trapped inside." The paramedic nodded, already radioing for backup. The chaos around them intensified, each sound, each face blending into a blur of expectation and dread. Emily leaned closer to Jake, her eyes wide with the weight of it all. "I don't want to think about what could have happened if we hadn't gotten her out in time." "Yeah," Jake agreed, fear still gripping his heart. But then he glanced at the woman, whose eyes now sparkled with renewed hope. A voice broke through the noise, one they hadn't expected. "Jake! Emily!" They turned to see their friend Sam, breathless and wide-eyed, rushing toward them. Jake's chest tightened at the sight. "What are you doing here?" "Just heard about the fire," Sam gasped. "I couldn't believe you two were inside." The reality of their survival took on a different shape in that moment. They weren't just figures lost in a smoky disaster. They were flesh and blood, walking away from the ashes. As the paramedics loaded the woman into the ambulance, Jake felt the shift in the atmosphere. They had escaped the fire, but a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was awakening. Emily looked at Jake, a silent question in her eyes. Jake took a deep breath, his thoughts racing to the future. "What if this changes everything?" he whispered, almost to himself. But before Emily could respond, the sound of an explosion echoed in the distance, sending a chill running down Jake's spine. What could possibly come next? And as they stood there among the chaos, the question loomed larger than ever: had they truly escaped, or was something more dangerous about to unfold? The trembling gaze of Jake flickered toward the horizon, where the last remnants of smoke danced against an eerily bright sky. The explosion had cracked through the air like a whip, and uncertainty hung over him like a dark cloud, threatening to rain down chaos again. "Did you guys hear that?" Sam's voice broke through the haze, his expression suddenly serious. It sounded like a gas main or something. We have to be careful. The crowd seemed to shift, anxiety buzzing in the air, as people instinctively took a step back, unsure of what might happen next. Jake's heart raced, the moment fraught with tension that felt almost tangible. We should get as far away from here as we can, he urged, glancing toward Emily, who still held tightly onto the woman's hand, her eyes darting around nervously. He could see the fear bubbling beneath the surface of her otherwise composed demeanor. The paramedics were busy attending to their charge, and someone yelled for crowd control, but Jake only had eyes for Emily. We need to go, he said more forcefully now. He couldn't shake the intuition that they weren't out of danger yet. Okay, let's move, she replied, her voice steadying as she took a deep breath, gathering her composure. They helped the woman to her feet, the three of them leaning into each other for support as they stepped back. The crowd's chatter grew louder, simmering with unease. Whispers about the fire and potential aftershocks circulated, each voice layered with rising worry. Jake caught glimpses of disbelief on faces. He didn't recognize people who had come for the spectacle of the fire, but were now witnesses to the surreal aftermath. Let us head around the corner, Sam suggested, pointing toward a narrow alley that seemed to promise a momentary respite from the chaos. There's a cafe where we can wait until things settle down. The woman nodded, her face still pale but determination rising within her. Lead the way, she said, her voice stronger than before. As they turned, Jake caught a glimpse of the bakery one last time. The flames had surrendered to blackened ruins, but the radiant orange glow still taunted him from the edges where raw embers lingered. A strange thought flickered through his mind. Was this what rebirth looked like? He wanted to ask Emily about it, but the questions tangled up with the fear didn't leave space for words. Wrapping an arm around the woman's shoulder, they maneuvered through the thrumming tide of people, the murmur of voices hanging in the air like a thick fog. Jake felt anxiety creeping back in. Was Emily okay? He shifted his gaze to her, and in that moment, the two of them shared a powerful understanding. It was a burden they would carry together. As they bypassed the alley, they stumbled upon the cafe, windows illuminated as if inviting them to a little world untouched by the day's horrors. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with pastries, a brief intoxicating reminder of normalcy. Sam pushed the door open and a tiny bell jingled, sounding almost cheerful amidst the chaos outside. Jake helped the woman settle at a table, providing a moment of peace. As they sat down, Emily reached for Jake's hand, squeezing it tightly. We made it, she breathed, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We have to keep reminding ourselves of that. Just then a commotion erupted outside, drawing their attention. Shadows moved swiftly, and suddenly police officers rushed by, followed by a group of distraught people who were clearly searching for loved ones. The woman at their table flinched, gripping the edge of the table as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the moment. They can't be just figuring this out now, Sam whispered, bewildered. Anxiety rippled through the cafe as more patrons leaned toward the window, concern etched onto their faces. Jake, Emily said, breaking his lingering thoughts, there is something we need to talk about. If we survive that fire, what if what comes next? I send tea over? Before he could respond, a loud crash sounded from outside, followed by cries of surprise. The room halted, breath collectively held, as eyes turned back to the window. Jake's heart raced again as fear pooled in his stomach. What's going on out there? Is this really happening? Whatever they thought they had escaped might be only the beginning. The crowd shifted nervously, and Jake felt the tension simmer as if everyone knew something he didn't. Suddenly, he knew this day would not end quietly. What lay ahead was still a mystery, but one thing was clear: things were about to get a whole lot more complicated. The world around them erupted with sounds that felt almost surreal, clashing emotions intertwined with fear, hope, and uncertainty. Jake's heart thundered in his chest, and he instinctively tightened his grip on Emily's hand. The cafe had initially offered a momentary refuge, but now it felt like a pressure cooker with the heat rising too quickly. Emily's voice broke through the rising tide of chaos. Jake, we need to face whatever is happening out there. She looked at him, eyes blazing with that familiar determination that ignited something deep within him. Are you sure? Jake asked, glancing towards the window where people moved in frantic waves. What if it's dangerous? Staying here won't change anything, she replied, her voice steady as the ground shook beneath what felt like the aftershocks of their earlier fears. We need to see if we can help. We have to keep pushing forward. He felt the weight of her words sink steadily into his heart. Together, they had gasped through flames and rescued a life. And now something bigger was taking shape, something that demanded to be faced head-on. "You're right," he breathed, his resolve hardening like steel. "Let us do this." As they exited the cafe, Jake took a deep breath, the night air feeling electric around them. The streets were crowded with people from Greenville, all searching for loved ones, overwhelmed, yet as resilient as ever. Jake and Emily moved forward, stepping into the uncertain tides of humanity as they weaved between anxious neighbors and frantic searches for familiar faces. And amidst the tumult, another loud crash echoed in the distance, forcing the crowd to freeze like statues, all eyes darting toward the source. Jake felt a familiar dread creeping back in. What was that? Emily looked at him, her grip tightening as if grounding herself through the storm of uncertainty. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving. There are people who might need us." Just as they gathered steam, they spotted Mrs. Holloway, a shaky figure enveloped by a few neighbors, her face marred with worry. "The bakery, it's gone, my dreams," her voice broke like glass, reflecting the pain that had rippled through the heart of their community. Jake stepped forward, feeling compelled to ease her burden. "Mrs. Holloway, we salvaged some desserts. You've brought joy to so many lives. Together we can rebuild." Tears welled in her eyes, and the acknowledgement of community offered her solace, igniting a spark of hope amidst despair. "It changes nothing about the love we shared there," she whispered, taking a trembling breath, strength penetrating through her grief. Jake turned back towards Emily, who stood firm against the tide of uncertainty. "If we can make room for that spirit of ours here and now, maybe we can start mending the pieces." Above the din, the sound of sirens still wailed, but now they felt different, assertive and commanding, almost promising. Jake began to see a flicker of clarity amid the chaos. They had already survived something unimaginable together. They could face anything, as long as they stood united. A massive figure appeared through the crowd, and people parted like waves for the local fire chief. "We need volunteers to help those displaced," he called. Jake's heart surged. Here was their call to action. Here was the moment to transform fear into purpose. "Let us go," Jake urged Emily, determination burning bright within him. They approached the chief, who was organizing groups to assist with search and rescue efforts. "I'll help," Jake shouted, his voice carrying through the anxiety-laden air. Emily echoed his sentiment, inspiration alighting her features. "We both will." The chief turned to them, nodding approvingly. "Thank you. We need all hands on deck. Let us save as many lives as we can." Their hands moved, exchanging water, supplies, coordinating searches alongside neighbors united by purpose. Every shared moment bore witness to renewed hope, igniting their spirits brighter than ever. As darkness enveloped the neighborhood, Jake and Emily found themselves standing together against the backdrop of flickering lights. "This is what we were meant to do," Jake said softly, glancing into her eyes, now sparkling with a fire that matched his own. Emily nodded, her smile radiant, bleeding warmth into the cool night. "We can't change what happened, but we can bring kindness back into this chaotic world." It became clear. The flames that once threatened to consume their town sparked growth instead. The heart of Greenville resonated stronger, and the bonds of community deepened through every act of resilience. And as dawn approached, hues of gold began to pour over the horizon, painting the sky with possibilities. They raised their heads to the brightening world around them, forged by the fire yet unbroken. Whatever lay ahead, they faced it with love unshakable and unyielding. Together, they had discovered true wealth not in riches, but in shared experiences and unbreakable bonds. As they turned to the crowd cheering on the horizon, Jake felt something profound shift within him. This was the heart of the American dream, the community woven together in the pursuit of love and hope. As they stepped forward into a future anew, Jake and Emily embraced the unknown. They understood now that real transformation began with each act of love, and in this shared journey, they found a home. So remember, this is more than just a story, it's a movement. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.